Hey everyone, you're watching me ink the 141st strip of my comic, The Grey Old Trees, and I'll just be talking here and there about my creative process, both for my comics in general and this strip specifically. If you enjoy what I'm doing here, there's a few things I would encourage you to do. You can like the video, you can subscribe to my channel, and if you'd like to help fund my artwork directly, there are links to my Patreon and Ko-fi pages in the description. I also have a book of my first 100 strips available, and there's a link to where you can buy that as well. Most of my comic strips are 4 panels long. In the beginning, those panels were usually all the same size, but at some point I started experimenting with the sizes of my panels and found that I could do just fine with smaller ones. That means that one of the panels gets to be a lot bigger, and now my strips with 4 panels have one big wide panel that I get to do with whatever I want. Typically, I'll use it for whatever the most visually impressive part of the strip story is, or for establishing shots. I also have a rule for myself that no 2 panels within the same strip can have the same dimensions, even if the difference is like just a small fraction of an inch. I do this because I think it helps the strips look more organic, especially when they're printed in my books, where 2 strips usually appear together on each page. I just don't want my nature comics to look like a mathematically perfect grid. So I'd like to address kind of an interesting conundrum that comes up when I write strips like this, where a character is complimenting Junebug's artwork. It's always a bit tricky because Junebug is me. Like, he's just me as a dragon, basically, and it feels a little bit weird to me to make up a character and have them like tell me how good they think my art is. But at the same time, it would be kind of weird if Junebug like showed his art to people and no one ever said anything nice about it. So I try to be mindful about like how enthusiastic they are. I try to just think about the nice things that people have actually said about my artwork and try to match that level or play it safer and dial it down a bit. Setting up this panel was a little more involved than usual. It's kind of a cramped panel, and there was a lot that needed to be in it for the panel to tell its part of the story effectively. I think I managed to get it all in there though, and I'd like to take a minute to walk through that. Okay, so Clover is standing at a desk looking at Junebug's drawings and talking to him as he's digging around in a chest looking for more. The elements that needed to be visible to tell this story were both characters, the desk with the drawings on it, the chest Junebug is searching through, and some drawings in the chest to sort of make it clear that that's what he's doing. The first element that needs to be placed, as always, is the speech bubbles, because whatever else is drawn here, those have to be there and be big enough to accommodate the dialogue. It happened that in this case, once the speech bubbles were placed, I was left with sort of a Utah shape to fit the artwork into. Before drawing anything, I sketched a little map of the room and where the furniture is in it, the desk, the chest, and the other elements of the room that will appear in later strips. That helped to give me an idea of where the things I needed to draw are in relation to each other. After the spatial relationships of the characters and objects were figured out, I could start arranging them in the panel. Clover's head and neck fit nicely into the slot beneath her speech bubble. Placing Junebug was a little trickier. He could go under his own speech bubble, but my original plan to have him looking down toward the chest in the corner would have had his horns covering up everything behind him, so I just turned his head the other way and tilted his head up so his horns are out of the way. And finally, you don't really need to see much of the non-character elements to know what they are and understand their role in the story. The chest is just a couple of shapes in the corner, and you can tell that Junebug's arm is reaching inside it because it goes over one shape and is obscured by the other. The drawings sticking up out of it are good foreground elements because they have an interesting shape that contrasts with the shapes around them, and they help in the storytelling sense by showing you that the chest is full of artwork. And the desk in the back reads effectively even though you can only see a small corner of it. I like this panel overall, but I do have an issue with it, and talking about it will also give me an excuse to talk about another ongoing project I'm working on. So up to this point, I've been drawing Junebug with a pretty humanoid body structure, you know, tail, horns, and wings notwithstanding. Even if he looks like a little cartoon person, he still looks like a person, kinda. And lately, I've been moving away from wanting that. I'd really rather he look more like a dragon than anything. With that in mind, the issue that I have specifically is the placement of his neck in relation to his head. It's right at the base of his chin, giving his whole head situation sort of an upside down light bulb shape. This is just a habit I've fallen into. It's something I was content to keep doing because, you know, it looks alright, but really it's not what I want him to look like. I have, though, for the last couple of weeks been sort of on and off working on a redesign to get him looking a little more dragony. Hopefully that'll become apparent in future strips. He'll look more like a cute cartoon reptile and less like a vaguely uncanny homunculus creature. Among other things, I'm looking at the shape of his head, the way it sits on his shoulders, the position of his legs, how his tail connects to his body. It's been a fun project to work on so far, and it's always just nice to see how the little guy changes over time. So you might be noticing now that Clover's face, as I'm inking it here in panel 4, looks a bit different than it did at the little camera flyover at the start of the video, and that is because this is an example of kind of a frustrating habit that I have where I'll draw something that I'm not thrilled with. I'll spend days trying and failing to convince myself that it's fine, only to cave and fix it like a week later. See, I'd had a lot of trouble trying to figure out how to draw Clover's mouth here. Head-on angles can be challenging on animal faces, and every way that I tried to give her a mouth just looked very wrong. So I just kind of did not. And it looks like really bad, right? Like the bottom of her nose almost reads like a mouth here, and it's not great. Her face as a whole just feels kind of rigid, like a mask or something, and her right eye is sort of sloughing off her face a little. It's just not what I was after. Fortunately, fixing it was really not that hard. After I'd taken a few days to get away from it first, it turned out that I was almost there. Her face has a definite shape from this angle, and it just needed to be brought out more confidently. So, first, I did give her a mouth. I don't really know why this one worked better than my previous attempts, but it did, which gave the shape of her face a nice taper toward the bottom. I also pushed in her left cheek, so it leads down into the point of her chin better. Small changes, but it really makes her expression feel a lot less stiff. I also clarified the line on the far side of her right eye so it doesn't look like it's melting off her head anymore. Alright, it's about time for me to start wrapping this video up. Overall, I'm pretty happy with how this strip turned out, especially after getting Clover's face right in panel 4. I do have some critiques though. I don't like that the most important elements in panel 4, Clover's face and the 2 speech bubbles, are kind of gathered together in the corner like that. It leaves a lot of disorganized negative space along the top and side of the panel that isn't really doing anything. I also don't like that panel 4 is set in kind of a vague, round void. There should be some furniture back there, and I even started to sketch it in, but I chose not to include it at the last minute because I thought it might clutter up the panel. I don't know if that was right or not, but I'm not really happy with how that turned out, so it's something to think about in the future. On a more positive note, I'm kind of proud of panel 1. I love drawing like bundles of natural elements like this, and this is a nature bundle that I'm happy with. The mushroom cap really stands out, and it's placed well in the panel, and the other 2 drawings in the frame show enough of themselves that you can tell what they are, but not so much that they compete with the mushroom drawing for visual prominence. Okay, I think that'll do it for this video. Once again, there are links to my comics and ways you can help support them in the description, along with a list of my materials, and as always, thanks for watching.